Hello, welcome to another weekly update. Welcome to another week. I hope you're having a good one. A couple of things to talk about this week in the world of Microsoft Teams development, in the world of Microsoft Graph, in the world of SharePoint, Microsoft 365 development all around. I've talked about this a few times, but really it does feel like all these worlds are converging. So as much as I have a focus on Microsoft Teams development, really more and more I find myself talking about Microsoft 365 development all up, not just Microsoft Teams development. All right, let's talk about a new release, a public preview release of the SharePoint Framework. So if you don't know, the SharePoint Framework have been rolling out new updates for a few years now on a fairly consistent schedule. And there's a new public preview of the SharePoint Framework, also known as SPFx. This is version 1.17. There's some updates in there kind of across the board. I hope it's fair to say it doesn't feel like there's one big like killer feature in this update. It isn't that sort of an update. It's more of a baseline update. So there's lots of fixes, no kind of really big features, but from everything that's in the blog post, it looks like this is going to be the base on which new exciting features that are coming soon will be rolled into. So this means it's a good choice if you want some stability and if you want to get your SharePoint framework to a place where you can take advantage of some of the new things that are coming. This is a good one. If you're just starting out, this is, I think, is also a good version to land to start with, just to get comfortable with what SPFx is. And then you're also in a good place to take advantage of some of the new stuff as it comes down the line. This is a new blog post by Vesa Juvonen talking all about what's new and what's coming here. So you can kind of read through, like I say, no really big standout features here, lots and lots of bug fixes. The blog post goes into some detail around how you install it, and then some backstory around what the framework is, why you might use it, and why it's interesting. So that's a good one. SPFx, if you use it already, if you can get on, it's a public preview, it's not GA, so just bear that in mind. But you know, if you've got a development machine, development environment, or anything like that, this feels like a good version to get onto if you can. All right, let's talk about some new capabilities, some new things. This is coming to Microsoft Graph and specifically the ToDo APIs. So we've known for a while, we've had these APIs out for controlling ToDo. Relatively new, I'd say, sometime last year from memory. I can't really remember. But there's been some updates, and one of the really big ones that I know a lot of people will be very pleased about is application permissions, because when the ToDo APIs came out, one of the big things about them is that they were just user delegated permissions, which is good, but also not good. It locks out a lot of different types of applications that require the user not to be present or want to look or set data across a number of different users. So that's really good that there is now this support for application permissions in the ToDo API. I mean, it would be nice if they were there from the beginning, but I get why they're not. So the next best thing is that they're now available, which is really good. So this blog post goes into those details about exactly what those permissions are. They're here. You can see them: tasks.readWrite and tasks.read.all. They're admin consent permissions, which makes sense. The blog post has got a lot of detail on how you might use them. Some other things that have come as well with this update is support for attachments as well. And so there's all the details in that blog post. But for me, the thing to take away from that is there's application permissions now in the ToDo APIs. That's really good news. It means you can take advantage of them for headless applications or user not present applications, or really any application where you want to take action across a number of different users, not just the user that's logged in. Loads and loads of use cases for doing that. Okay, let's talk about something else. This is an interesting blog post because I sort of was aware you could do this, but I've never really dug into it. So it's cool to see a example blog post with some demo exactly how you might do this. And this concerns Azure Communication Services and specifically building a conversational bot, an SMS bot. Now, we talked about this last week, building an SMS bot using Azure Communication Services and Azure OpenAI. Again, not particularly useful, but it's a good technical demo. This is that same experience, but done using low code, using Power Automate, which I think is quite interesting because you can potentially build something quite powerful here. And I didn't realize that there was such good support in Azure Communication Services for Power Automate, specifically the ability to send SMS messages. That's the real thing that was new for me that I didn't realize Power Automate did. So if you don't know, you can send SMS messages with Power Automate. Because Azure Communication Services supports an eventing model, and so does Power Automate, you can also react to incoming SMS messages. Now, and you can see, combine those two things together, you can create a solution where you have something that ingests SMS messages, does something with them, like send them off to OpenAI, and then take the answer and send it back via SMS message. And that's exactly what this blog post does. Goes through exactly that flow, which is nice. The blog post is good in that it lines up all the prerequisites, all the things you need to have first, and then tells you how to go about setting all this up in Power Automate, which is interesting. And as you can see, it's this send SMS feature that I was not previously aware of, actually, that you can do in Power Automate. I think that's very cool. I'm definitely going to be looking into see whether that's something I can build into my existing Power Automate flows. If sending a Teams message is not intrusive enough, if you really want to get someone's attention, SMS tends to cut through most things. And that's something that you can do in Azure Communication Services. You can send and receive SMSs. There's a whole back end to that that if you're a developer, might be interesting to get into. It has support for long-lived conversations, so you can have that sort of relationship, if you like, with a customer over SMS, where the customer can text back in 6 months' time, and the system knows who they are, if you like, and they're not treated completely from scratch. So that's interesting. But yeah, I've not seen it previously built into Power Automate like that, so I thought that was really cool. And so I wanted to kind of highlight it as something to be aware of, because I think it could be useful to you in building solutions. Finally, one more thing I wanted to leave you with, and it's about building Microsoft Teams applications. It's not specifically technical as such. It's more around business development and growth and strategy and things like that. It's about what you do once you've built your Teams application, your Microsoft Teams application, and you put it into the store. What do you do next? How do you grow that application? How do you get more users? How do you get more installs? How do you get more money? And so, yeah, it's a whole blog post around strategy and around execution to ensure growth in your Teams application. Honestly, you could probably apply some of what's in this blog post to any application, to any solution, not necessarily a Microsoft Teams application, but it's that's sort of what they're talking about here. And I think it's really good, actually. It's good to have these viewpoints. It's good to have this thought process. It's interesting to me that these Microsoft documentation, because this what I'm going to show you in a minute, comes from the Microsoft Docs. So previously called docs.microsoft.com, now called learn.microsoft.com. And they tend to be mostly technical documentation, but this is definitely more businessy and it's more strategy. Let me show you. In fact, that's exactly what it's called. But it's covering some of these things around, how much can you outgrow, understanding growth models, things like options for growing your app. So sales-led growth, marketing-led growth, product-led growth. These are very non-technical areas that I get it. If you've built an app, if you're an indie developer, this is really useful because this might not be your, like where your expertise lies. Your expertise might lie in the bits and bytes of creating an application, technically creating an application. And I see this so often. Really good people, technically brilliant people building great applications that then don't go anywhere because they're not sold in the right way. They're not talked about in the right way. They're not told, their story is not coherently told to the correct people at the correct time. And so many apps die and wither that way because they never reach the people that they were intended to help. And I think that's a real shame. And so it's good to have a blog post like this that calls some of this stuff out and gives a kind of 101. I mean, I don't think there's anything earth-shatteringly unique and, not previously understood in this blog post. I think it's probably a fairly fairly entry level 101 around marketing and sales and stuff like that. But that might be exactly what somebody needs if they've just built an app and they're by themselves or an indie developer who's not done this before. So I think this is really good, and I think it's a really good thing that Microsoft have put it out. Actually, they go through all sorts of things in here. There's like go-to-market investments. There's like growth experiments. There's monetization investments. There's all sorts of things being talked about in this blog post. So it's worth a read anyway. It's kind of interesting, even if you don't have an app in the App Store. Chances are you probably do something with a business that involves selling to people. So actually, this might be quite interesting and useful because of what it covers and how it's targeted. It's got quite general appeal, I think. All right, those are the things I wanted to tell you about this week. I hope you have a good week. I think it's going to be another busy week. It does feel like that. Things are kind of getting up to their 100%, I guess. We've got conferences coming up. We've got new products being launched. There's new hardware around. It's an exciting time, isn't it? And lots of things happening in the AI space, of course. It's certainly causing me to revisit some of the talks I've already committed to for this year, and I thought I knew what was going to be in them and changing them slightly. So certainly the ones where I'm talking about design strategy for bots and things like that. Now I will be including AI much more. I mean, I was already talking about it before, but a little bit more concrete examples now. We've got some great examples out of the way people have been playing with Bing, for instance. Some good examples on the how to, but also some good examples on the how not to, which is always good. So yeah, that's interesting as well, and keeps all this stuff relevant. All right, have a great week, whatever it is you're doing this week, and I will see you again next week.